Hello and welcome to the Dicebreaker podcast. It's a Friday. We're back. It's another Friday. It's 2 o'clock unless you're listening to this in the future, in which case it's whatever time is on the clock right now. Welcome. I'm Matt Jarvis. I am the host of this here podcast. I am joined this week by two of the team. Well, one of the team and one of the extended family team. But of course, as much a member of the Dicebreaker team as anyone else. Alex Meehan, first of all, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm the member of the inner family.
The inner circle.
Yeah, although I do consider myself more of an aunt. Or your child.
You've got big aunt energy, yeah.
It's one or the other. It depends.
You're the aunt that
on
my
mood
parents
I'm
don't
in.
allow me to see.
Yeah, I'm the one who brings over the Sunny D.
Do they make Sunny D anymore? Do they give away free basketballs anymore? If someone knows, please write in.
I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, because it's illegal to put that much sugar in like a drink.
Which is why it still exists in the States.
Yes, and speaking of which, our man in Texas, Chase Carr. Hello, How are you doing?
Good. Sugared up on all that Sunny D. Yeah, it still comes in like gallon jugs in the grocery store shelves. Big old plastic containers.
I learned about a soft drink called Faygo. Chase.
Oh, Faygo, yeah. Isn't this an Insane Clown Posse thing?
Yeah, and I honestly can't tell you if that is because we are immediately digressing. I cannot tell you if that is because of the Insane Clown Posse or if that's because of Homestuck.
See, yeah, I know about it because I watched a 2-hour-long video about Homestuck, which I previously knew absolutely nothing about, but had heard of through the bowels of the internet. But now I know of it far too much about it, and I'm quite happy that I was not.
Faygo might as well just be Sunny D plus carbonation for like all the sugar and taste it imparts.
And the interesting colorings. Like I've never drunk a blue drink in my life.
Never. You never had a Panda Pop as a kid, or like a Mountain? Well, no, not Mountain Dew. That's green. What's the?
Oh no!
Powerade?
Hang
Powerade?
on. I rescind my statement. Back in secondary school, and this is wild that they allowed this. We used to be able to buy like Powerade from the canteen, and the idea of like 12-year-old children like drinking Powerade and then going to classes is just who allowed this? No wonder. Bouncing off the walls.
Yeah. I think I don't know if it was similar for you both, because I was part of like the goth and emo crew that would sit under the stairs near the art block, and they would drink like Monster Energy drinks in place of like alcohol. Basically, it was the hey, you're in the cool crew now because you're just getting all the sugar in you. And I can't look at them now and not just associate any Monster Energy drink, other energy drinks available, with that very specific time of my life.
Yeah, no, we had Powerade, we didn't have Monster Energy.
Yeah.
But like it was considered to be cool if you drank like Powerade.
Yeah. Every time I look at a Monster, I just hear like the faint tinny noise of Hawthorne Heights playing from a mobile phone speaker.
Just ancient queens with more taurine in their blood than oxygen.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't part of any subculture when I grew up. I wasn't part of.
Oh, you were a normie.
I wasn't even that though. I was just my MO was I listened to Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay, no, I know exactly. Yeah, I know exactly where you fit into the school ecosystem of subcultures.
And I played on a GameCube, and that was my thing. Like, I wasn't part of any subculture. I almost made my own subculture, but I was the only one in it. So
it's a good place to be. If you couldn't tell, we're here to chat about board games, and tabletop games. That's what we do. It's what this podcast is about, believe it or not.
Ostensibly, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, what's the normie of the board game world? Is it just Catan?
Catan.
Or is it Monopoly?
Yeah, it's Catan.
No, I feel like Monopoly is the corporate business person.
Yeah.
It's the normies parent coming home from work and telling them to turn that damn racket down.
Yeah, Catan is the normie of the board game world. Like,
Yeah, Monopoly is the yuppie of the board game world. Like
Oh,
someone's
yeah, no,
that's
aging
perfect,
yuppie
yeah.
parent. Mhm.
Yeah, offers a business card to everyone it meets. All right, excellent. Well, now that we've solved the
insulted.
the
Answer the big
unanswered questions of the board game world, we can dive into what we've been doing this week, and let's do so by turning to Chase first. What have you been up to? And in fact, what have you been up to since you were last on the podcast, which would have been the end of last year? It's been a few weeks since we last had you on.
Yeah, I will say that I had a nice little break. The whole Dicebreaker team went on a nice holiday, which, coming from the US, was unexpected, but really nice. I didn't do anything at all. We had a couple of big cold fronts come through Texas, which after last year, we had like a big, just sort of like infrastructure breaking freeze. So I'm sort of like, I have this instinctual...
God.
Yeah, I have this
remember that.
instinctual cringe at any time the weather drops below about 30 Fahrenheit, which is close to 0 Celsius. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how that works. But yeah, anytime the weather dips, I get really sort of nervous. And we had a few of those over the break, but otherwise, had a lot of fires in the fireplace, played a lot of video games, drink just more eggnog than I think any one person should. But that's the holidays. It was nice and relaxing. So what I've been playing this week, I haven't been playing per se, but sort of like preparing to play the Root RPG. I got the books, which like the 2 core books, which is like one has like all the rules, and then the second expands it with a few other factions as well as some like expanded rules and stuff like that. It's called Travelers and Outcasts, I believe, is the second book. So I've been reading up on that. And it's really interesting. It is, so for those who are not familiar, it is Magpie Games' like RPG take on Leader Games' Root, like taking that board game and turning it into an RPG, which is a weird task. I'm not sure. I meant to look this up. I can't imagine any other board games that have become RPGs in this way. We're seeing Tales from the Loop make a board game now, but
yeah, and even that was an art book first, so it kind of for a board game initially. I guess there was the Netrunner book for Genesis, the Fantasy Flight put out, which of course then it was Android, I suppose, rather than Netrunner specifically,
right?
So kind of there, but not in, like you say, not in the same way at all.
Supposedly, there's a zombie side role-playing game. We were talking about this the
other
day.
Yeah, there is, isn't there?
But you were like, I remember covering it back when it was announced, but apparently it's just been released and none of us noticed.
Yeah, it just kind of completely flew under the radar.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, so many games just seem to like just whisper out because there's no PR sort of device in place to like help these games get any sort of advertising or anything once they're out. But the Root RPG, like, so I came at this like really interested in how you take Root, which is a fairly involved board game. Obviously, like, listeners of the podcast will be familiar with Alex and Matt's sort of travails playing Root, trying to one-up each other. It does a really interesting job by focusing on the vagabond. Like, the players are vagabonds, right? And in fact, like, y'all had played this last year, so like y'all can go after you listen to the podcast, go and watch this on YouTube. You'll have like a short playthrough of the quick play. So the players are vagabonds, which are like the little critters who like aren't associated with any one faction, just sort of like travel around the woods doing tasks, trading, all that sort of stuff. So you're kind of, the players are positioned in this sort of Robin Hood space where you are freelancers, mercenary types, who can be hired by any one of the factions to like do whatever. It's Magpie, so obviously it's powered by the apocalypse, so it's sort of fiction forward. The gameplay leads to triggering moves, which gives you some dice to roll, which helps the fiction travel forward. That whole thing, it's what Magpie's known for. It's what they do best. You see it in all their other games, from Avatar Legends to Masks and all the other games that they do. What is interesting about the Root RPG is its focus on the vagabonds being political creatures. Like, they are inherently tied to these factions, even if they don't work for them directly. They have to take jobs for them in order to like earn a living, in order to survive. And in doing so, they will earn enmity or praise with that faction, and their like sort of reputation will go one way or another, which gives you access, one, to other moves that you can do in social situations. Like you can go up to like the Marquise de Cat and say like, hey, I need some resources, and like use your reputation to get the Marquise de Cat to just fork over some goods. Or you might walk into a clearing and the Eerie, who hates you, sees you and immediately attacks on sight, which kind of changes the way that the game plays. But I really like the way that like all of the adventures are set around you navigating the inherently political space of the woodlands as it changes. And everything that you do is going to very slightly slip those scales of balance one way or another. And you kind of walk the like the knife's edge of making sure that you can continue to make a living without throwing the woodlands into like full revolt or like leading to all out war, unless that is what you want to do. So I think it does a really nice job of like framing the adventures that you could tell. Like it is not a sort of like D&D-esque or like 5th edition-esque, like you are adventurers, go and do whatever you want. It's like, no, anything you do is going to affect the lives of the denizens in the woodlands. And it's going to either give one faction more space to sort of exert their influence or take away another's, which is going to affect how they treat you. So I think by framing it by the way that you operate between all of the factions gives this really cool underpinning to all of the adventures and all the stories that you could tell. And the second book does a really nice job of giving the game master a sort of like faction turn, where there are very explicit and sort of like advanced rules for like what happens in between sessions. All of the factions sort of have actions that they can do where they'll move into a clearing. And if say the Marquise de Cat runs into the Woodland Alliance, they will take certain actions. If the Underground Duchy runs into the Lizard Cult, they will take certain actions. And so without the players really noticing, session to session, the Woodland will change. How the factions are interacting will change based on their actions, but not through their direct intervention. So it really sells that sort of like, I am living in a space, we are operating in a space that is changing by the day, by the minute, and we just have to survive it.
Yeah, which is cool because that's exactly how the Vagabond works in the board game, right? Is that you have relationships with those factions, and it was always interesting when they first announced it because the Vagabond is basically like playing a small adventure game in amongst everyone else fighting. So you're acquiring items, you're literally completing quests. So when they announced it and said that you would just play as a vagabond, which is you can be like a badger, you can be a raccoon, it's not tied down to one specific, like for instance, the Airy being birds, you're not tied to a specific species in the same way. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Have you gone through the rules where it then uses the board from the board game as well? Because that was the other thing that really kind of stuck out as like, oh, that's like wild. I don't know another, I guess because there aren't a lot of board game RPGs going, but I don't know another RPG that just wraps the actual board game into it as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So you will use the board not in sort of like a 4X strategy game sort of way where you're always looking at the board and your moves are going to make little like meeples move around the board. It's more of a sort of just like tactical view, a secondary tactical view that you can use to like track how things are changing. Because like on the ground, minute to minute play is going to be you interacting with other people. You're going to be interacting with representatives of factions, or you're going to go talk to the mayor of this clearing, or meet up with like other vagabonds that are like adventuring through the woods. So the board game will really be used as a sort of like maybe in between sessions or like at the beginning or end of sessions for the game master to show the group how things have changed politically from a sort of like miles up view. That's still cool. I still think that's really neat how you can like use the board game in that way. They also say you can just track it on a piece of paper and just draw circles and lines that connect all of that. But I think it would really sell. I mean, obviously, like, help me with the name of the artist. I can't draw it.
Oh, Farron.
Kyle Farron.
Yeah, Kyle Farron. I mean, Kyle Farron's artwork is fantastic. It's selling the whole sort of like look and feel of Root. And the rule books have a bunch of his art throughout, which is really nice. So if you do want to use the board game, I think that'd be really cool. And it'd help really sell that as like, it's almost like a general at a war map using like the big long stick to like push some units across the board into one clearing or another. It would probably be even especially effective if, for whatever reason, by your actions, a clearing gets razed to the ground, which can happen. You can do something and either unintentionally or intentionally, that clearing is just decimated. just gone. And so I think it'd be really cool to just sort of like move all the figures out of there and plop like a big X down on the board, be like, this place is just evaporated. You no longer come here.
In the board game, the Woodland Alliance regularly do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like they literally have a mechanic where it clears all the other pieces off the board, or at least that clearing on the board, and then puts their own pieces in place. So one thing I find really interesting about the Root RPG and the fact that it does exist is the fact that if you were to ask me if there was any other board game that would make a really good role-playing game, transition to a role-playing game, aside from my own bias about Root, like Root is like one of those ones that I would say no, that would really work, because and I've actually talked about this in the past, about how Root has such storytelling potential in it, because the factions, like the way that they work, is fundamentally tied into their own sort of what's the word, like traits and themes. So like the Aerie are naturally full of themselves, so they don't trade, for example, because and also because they're so politically, there's a lot of upheaval in the Aerie, and that's kind of how revolts work, because they are constantly switching leaders. That's partly why they are under threat from the cats, because there's so much turmoil within their own ranks that allows the Marquise de Cat to kind of muscle in a lot more onto the forest, despite the fact that the Aerie kind of ruled the roost quite literally before the Marquise de Cat came in. And then whereas the Marquise de Cat is just incredibly hungry, like the ambition behind the Marquise, and that feeds into how they operate. So Root always felt like a game that was also driven by storytelling aspects as well as all the mechanics. So the fact that the player in the Root RPG is a vagabond, I think, is such a good choice, because then it still allows them to interact with all the different factions. Because let's face it, the vagabond faction was never the most interesting, in my opinion anyway, at least in terms of, like, mechanically speaking, not necessarily, because the different types of vagabonds you can play keep things fresh and exciting. But like thematically speaking, to me, the vagabonds were always the least interesting faction, because there's not really anything particularly about them apart from the fact that they are neutral and they're kind of in it for themselves. And it's possible that their biggest alliance is with the Woodland Alliance, because they're both kind of like outsiders. But like having the players occupy that space makes so much sense, because it allows them to kind of imprint their specific ideas and like traits into this faction, and then still interact with all of those really fun and interesting factions that have very distinct traits and ideas about them.
I will say, like, I think it's really nice that the vagabonds are the focus, because like you said, like mechanically it's sort of like heads up, like very high up. Like Root, the board game, does have a lot of storytelling potential, and the strength of the RPG in reading through seems to be like you are looking at how this affects individuals, right? You're looking at how this affects like the blacksmith in a clearing, because the Marquise de Cat and the Aerie have been fighting for years over control of this faction. It's like, yeah, I'm rich, but they keep burning down my house. It's sort of thing. And the book goes to great lengths to paint as much as possible all of the factions as like politically gray. Like even the which is could be a big pitfall, right? Like the Woodland Alliance is a revolutionary faction. They want to push all of these other sort of like colonizing powers. And you could argue like the Aerie has been like a sort of like colonizing power for years going back. They want to push them out and like sort of like, like revolt, but their means are sort of inherently violent. They are doing so by raising through, which you can be a conscientious objector to violence, like peace through violence sort of stuff. And I think like it's really interesting that they use the vagabonds and the player's perspective through the vagabonds to interrogate that. And you can choose which factions you want to bring in. So if your group is like, I'm really interested in like what the Eerie is doing, like how does the Eerie react to the Marquise de Cat moving in? You can set it up that y'all are starting out with a little bit of faction with the Eerie, and you can work to sort of see how that happens, boots on the ground. So I think that is a really cool way that they have sort of sidestepped, I think, what is a pitfall of political grayness, which could just be a sort of like, we're going to just like not make a choice here. But instead, they're giving the players the choice to be like, oh, we are interacting with this faction, and we think that they're just abhorrent now after we've talked with them for a bit.
Because I mean, like the Eerie, for example, on the face of things, they are like not a morally good faction. Like
No.
they're like you said, they used to rule like the woodland, and they're very like full of themselves. We joke calling them the Tories because they do have quite a strong Tory vibe about them, of like lordship, land ownership, etc.
And they only poach one leader to put another one of them in place.
To put another one, exactly.
The only change is internal. Yeah.
And they're associated with the color blue as well. So, but also arguably they're one of the lesser violent factions, because it's often the case that violence doesn't really benefit the Eerie as much as it does for them to build roosts, for example.
Right. Their numbers are low. They need to like be more political in their maneuvering and not just all out warfare, right?
Yeah. Like it. So it's kind of like, they are landowners. They're lordship types, but also they're possibly doing a lot less damage and destruction and violence than the Woodland Alliance. So yeah, in many ways it kind of works. I always kind of viewed the factions of Root, even with the Woodland Alliance arguably being the more morally good one, I all kind of view them as like bad in various ways. It's all just one big conflict, isn't it? Like ultimately. So I think that kind of perspective does work. So yeah, we had fun playing it back when the quick start rules came out, but I am looking forward to giving it a try when I can, the full version.
Yeah, is it out now or is it coming out? I kind of lost track of it because it was one of those things that just kept sliding back, I think, due to
I think
shipping
so. It is one of those games, I need to double check, but I think it's one of those games that is like, it is in fulfillment to backers at the moment. Like that is heading out. And yeah, so pre-orders for like retail versions is going on right now. You can get like the physical books, you can pre-order them. There are like there's the one core book and then the one Travelers and Outsiders, which brings in a lot of the other factions. But right now, if you backed it on the Kickstarter, it is fulfilling, and then it'll come to retail sometime this year, I believe. So I believe the first half of the year, if I remember correctly.
Cool. Excellent stuff. Yeah, I really enjoyed what we played. Like you mean, like it must have been, like over a year. Well, it was easily over a year now.
It was over a year ago.
2 years ago, because we were still in the office because Zoe joined us. So yeah, which is wild in itself. But yeah, that's cool. You've been playing anything else, Chase, as well as Root?
Just real quickly, I'll say that I've been playing. I don't want to say I've still played. I picked up Magic the Gathering again. I'm not playing Arena anymore. I think I'm going to write about this on the site. I dropped off of Arena, and I don't know if I'm going to go back, except for
really?
work things. Yeah, for
okay.
Myriad and complicated reasons that would take up another 30 minutes on this podcast. But I've been playing physical Magic because we have a group of people within my sort of like COVID pod who all play. We get together for a cube, which is like this set of cards that you can draft from that are like curated personally. And then so you crack open the packs, then you can put them back in. So a friend of mine created this cube for 6 to 8 of us to get together, but we also play Commander. And I've been getting into building some like really cheap, fun Commander decks. Buying some singles, theme around stuff. I'm building one around fungus and then another around pirates. I really like, so I might write about this as well, but I really like tribal decks. I like the sort of thematic decks where creature types interact with each other. So you can have a bunch of creatures of the same type, and then you have some spells and some enchantments and artifacts that sort of like boost all your creatures of a certain type. And it's also just, I think, a really nice coherent way for my brain to come at deck building, which with Magic, with its thousands of possible cards, is a monumental task that just almost immediately makes me want to go to sleep. But if I can be like, no, I just want to like narrow it down to just some mushroom people.
Nothing but mush.
Yeah, just nothing but mushrooms, just like, spores and guys. That gives me like at least a smaller, narrower foundation in which to do some deck building, and has helped me really have some fun just sort of like sorting around. And it helps that they're cheap. I am trying my best to make some decks and not just spend an ungodly amount of money, which
it feels like a slippery slope.
I love the idea of you going to like an official tournament. Like, this is a big tournament, right? And then someone's like interviewing you, like video interview, and then they're like, okay, so what kind of deck are you running?
Tell us your secret.
And then you just lower your sunglasses and you just say mushroom.
Yeah, it's like me leaning back in my chair. It's like
mushroom.
Fun guys. So that's me getting back into Magic. I don't know if the decks are going to be good, but they're going to be fun, and I think that's the sort of wedge I want to play in.
That's kind of where I fall in. It's why I really liked Jumpstart when they did Jumpstart, which I think is still not on Arena. It kind of there was a not full version of it, right?
Yeah,
that they put on Arena.
It is, and I believe they said that they're going to keep it there for it is not a permanent thing, but it's like we're going to keep it there for a while, sort of thing, and they haven't taken it away yet. But
I like the theme end of things rather than having to think very heavily about like mechanical combos, because it's just not where my head is at. I don't have time for it. But being able to be like, I like dogs and I like pirates. Great, I have dogs and pirates here. Like put them together.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I made a cat deck at one point.
There's a lot. Oh,
you did.
On. Like,
it was all right.
The cool thing about Amonkhet was like a lot of cats because of the whole Egyptian thing. But that's cool. Hearing you talk about playing cubes each weekend always has me like, I would really like to like run a draft. I have a bunch of booster packs that have just sat around for years at this point, because every now and then I'm just like, I would love to run a draft, and then I text my friend and they're similar and being like, I just kind of overwhelmed by the idea of playing Magic at all, even if it's a draft. But one day it's going to happen. I've got all those unhinged decks.
So that's a fun set to draft too.
Yeah, like all the unsets where they just break the rules. They always seem like a good, like you could have a good time with that with a load of people that don't know Magic, because those cards aren't designed to be like tournament balanced anyway. Just get wild, wet and wild Magic. All right, if that's everything you've been playing, let's pass on over. Alex Meehan, what have you been up to recently?
Well, Mr. Jarvis, as the listeners and the viewers might know, last week we played Root, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Here it is. The segment.
We played Root a couple of times, or at least some of us played Root. Others of us were present, but just didn't seem to play.
Yeah, I mean, I will say. Delicious. I will say, so we played the stream last week.
We did,
on the Thursday stream, it was myself, Mr. Jarvis, and Wheels. I think we talked about this on the last podcast.
Yeah, we did. Because we played on the Thursday, and then we spoke on the Friday. Then we played more Root.
So the wounds were fresh on Friday when y'all talked about it.
Oh yeah, the wounds were really fresh.
And we were playing with the lizards and the Riverfolk expansion.
Expansion.
I love the lizards so much.
They're really good.
They're horrible, but
they're little gremlins.
They are gremlins. Like we were saying, we love the way that they're animated. We played on the Root app, which is still really good. And you can watch that video if you've not to find out what happened. But then, like we said last Friday, we just, because Liv said, I've never played Root, and we were like, well, we've got to change that. So we played it on Friday evening as well, using the app, but we played with just the standard factions because obviously Liv hadn't played yet, and the game is incredibly difficult to understand, let alone with the expansion factions.
Yeah, it's a cold-worldly game. It's a bit complex.
But yeah, we played that, and I played the Woodland Alliance. Mr. Jarvis, who did you play?
I genuinely can't remember. Who did I play? Did I play the Eerie? I think I played the Eerie in that.
You did. You did very well. You made a very
Thank you so much. That didn't sound condescending at all. Patting me on the head as I sit in third place.
You made a very impressive decree. I was convinced at one point you were going to go into boiler.
Yeah, I didn't fall into turmoil.
No, you did not.
Wow, that is impressive.
It was pretty honkingly big by the end, and you had a lot of bird cards in there. So I was like, just Matthew Jarvis,
armful of birds. Please don't fly away.
Big honks.
Yeah, you were playing it risky, and then I believe Wheels was the vagabond, and then Liv played the Marquise de Cat, because from our experience, the Marquise de Cat is probably the faction that's easiest to kind of get your head around to begin with.
Yeah,
because it's got a lot of mechanics that most people would be familiar with if they played board games, like, you know, resource management and just whacking them, building out, etc., etc.
Yep.
And as you might be able to tell, I won.
Just once either. You won. Well, maybe you won both times. Who can tell? Go and watch the stream. You were on top form.
No, I think it's mostly because I've actually played Root like in the last few months, because I played in person like a couple of months ago. So I think some people are a bit rusty, and obviously Liv hasn't played at all. So, but you know,
don't undermine your victory. It was
pretty impressive.
Yeah, you scored like 15 points. So you need, for those who don't know, you only need 30 points to win. And on your last turn, I think you scored somewhere in the realm of like 15. So you got like half of the amount you needed to win, and just like
wild,
ran away.
That seems to happen in a lot of my games, where it's just like it's pretty close, and in the last two turns, someone just goes like runaway victory.
Yeah, it's like the Woodland Alliance are like a timed explosive where they'll just sit there and they won't seem that dangerous, and then suddenly in one turn they'll rocket through the rankings.
Yeah, they are very much one. We joked about this before, but like once you know what they're capable of, it can sometimes be the case that they will be crushed like pretty early on, because we've seen what they can do.
Yeah.
And I think I just got really lucky with, I revolted really early on, like in the second turn or something ridiculous like that, in one of the middle clearing, which is ideal because it provides you with loads of access to the various other clearings, so you can spread sympathy easier. And then the next clearing I got as well was incredibly well connected. It was right in the middle too, and that just meant that when I set up my bases, I could just produce my little boxes, pop them out, and then have them go to other clearings and then turn into sympathy. Like that combo is just disgustingly good, because it doesn't cost you any supporters to do that. Like, it's just actions. That having that as an action is just wild to me. It takes like a lot of work to get to that point, so it's not like badly balanced, I think. But once you're able to do that, it's so hard to stand that out. But yeah, we played Fruit, and that was great. I'm on a roll. I fully suspect my next game I'm gonna be brought down. I've also played this week Terraforming Mars.
Oh yeah.
Which classic. I did decidedly less well at, because I'm not so good at that game. Granted, I've not played it a huge amount, but
I think like Root, it rewards a lot of, because you just learn the kind of
understand,
like pathways from like turn one through, and if you're kind of playing and you're like either new to it or you haven't played like a certain corporation before. Like getting into the rhythm of it can be a lot.
Yeah, well, like Root, there are other factors affecting it, so there's not always an optimum strategy. Like, because whereas Root very much has player interaction that stops you from just taking optimum paths all the time. Terraforming Mars has drafting in it, so that sort of random element means that you can't really create like optimum paths without just being incredibly lucky. But yeah, I played with a seasoned group, and we played using the app, which is pretty good, although it's very glitchy a lot of the time. You'll find that sometimes you have to exit out of the game and come back just because it just freezes because it just decides to do that. So not ideal. Thanks, Asmodee Digital.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah. Root made Dire. Yeah. Root was made by Direwolf and published by Direwolf. So like, and they have a a good track record of making good digital board games, whereas Asmodee Digital is a lot more mixed.
Mixed is the word.
Yeah. But yeah, I played a faction that was designed around building cities, and apparently, according to my friends, it's one of the easiest factions to play. And I was a little bit like, oh, okay. But I feel like I leaned into my that sort of ability a little bit too much and not focused maybe on doing other things. So we were getting to the end of the game, and my friends were like, oh, I don't think I've done very well. You know, like, I think this hasn't been a great game. And I was just sat there, just getting on with it. And then at the end, I was lost. So I was like, well, you know, like, ultimately, it's one of those games that until you finish the game, you can't really tell who's going to win because there's so many other factors involved with the end of game scoring that, you know, when you were counted, even when you were counted like the victory points I'd earned kind of along the way and the cities I'd built and everything, like other people had just utilized their cities a lot more by building greenery around them, as well as, you know, doing more victory point stuff than me. And eventually I was last. But yeah, no, I really like Terraforming Mars. I think it's a really good game. It's definitely a really good Euro game, which I often can struggle to gel with because I'm not hugely into games where you sit in your corner and kind of do your own thing and then don't really interact with other people. But I definitely think Terraforming Mars is the better of those kind of games because it still has that element of like the drafting gives it some randomness. Also what people take, and you can do things that affect other people by like stealing their resources, for example. And also it is one of those games that you can really like chew into, like Matt said, it's one of those games you have to play multiple times to really kind of understand how it works. So yeah, there you go. Terraforming Mars, it could.
Oh. Yeah, I couldn't remember if the dice game that they announced had come out yet, but I'm just looking and it is due to release this year.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Here it's just listed as Terraforming Mars : dice game.
Maybe it's not that. Maybe Ares Expedition is a different game as well.
Maybe. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they translate it to dice because yeah, it is a bit more. It's not entirely luck free, but it's definitely
on the side of it's a game that rewards efficiency because you start off with not really being able to do much, but then by towards the end of the game, your turns are supposed to be like you're squeezing every single thing you can get out of your turn. Like, and if you've done that well, which I don't do, then your last few turns can just take like.
Yeah.
I was sat there kind of just being like, I'm done. And then everyone else is still like taking their turns because they still got loads more to do.
Yeah.
But
for the record, Ares Expedition is the card game, which came out last year, I think. So there's also a dice game on the way. So they're bringing every drop from the Terraforming Mars popularity.
It's a popular game, which surprises me sometimes because
it's one of those games that you see on like every single list. Like
Yeah.
it just keeps popping up on like lists of games that you should buy, list of games like once you're done playing all these, like get into Terraforming Mars because it's just like very chewy and deep.
I think it's good, but I don't know if I love it. Like I've enjoyed what I play. I haven't played nearly as much as like Meehan, but yeah, it's like I played it, but I wasn't like bowled over by it. It's just like, yeah, this is a really solid strategy game. Like this is, it doesn't feel like it necessarily reinvents the wheel.
It definitely does not. But I do think what it does do, it just does it really well, and that's why people.
And there's something to be said for that, right? Yeah.
Like it's the thing is there are so many Euro games out there that do that thing of you sit in the corner, you do your thing, and you get your points, right? And that I think because there's so many out there, when one is particularly good, it just manages to stand out from the crowd and kind of gain that sort of recognition and notoriety. I mean, if you were like, what if there was one game that provided that satisfaction of playing it multiple times and getting better at it and really chewing into it? I mean, Root would be the one that I would pick because I think Root is objectively a better game. But or even like Lost Ruins of Arnak, for me, is like it provides that similar experience that Terraforming Mars gives. But I think Lost Ruins of Arnak is better than Terraforming Mars. Like it's kind of what it gives you, that kind of feeling of understanding and growing as like a player. But I have friends who think Terraforming Mars is like one of the best games like ever made. They love it. And I'm like, I respect that. I think it's great. But
you're really making the Alex Meehan bingo card players easy this episode. We've got Root and Lost Ruins of Arnak in the same sentence, even.
Look, okay, I know what I like. I'm consistent. Yeah, and I also our group that plays Deadlands finally got back together again, which is
nice.
A miracle because it's been months since we did our last session. It kind of just fell apart because life just happened as it does. But then a Christmas miracle happened, and we kind of got messaged, and we were like, let's just try and let's do it. Let's restart this up again. And so we did our first session in months this week, and I had to remember how to do Charles P. McGinty's voice again. And I was like, well, how do I do this again? And then I just sort of went straight into it. And they were like, there it is. And it was just really good. Like Deadlands, particularly the newest version, which is Weird West?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Deadlands and Weird West.
Deadlands Weird West, yeah. Which makes some really fundamental changes to the game that previous head of video Johnny really covered quite well, and a video that you can watch that kind of shows the progress that Deadlands have made, particularly in its depiction of the West and getting rid of some of the more gross
a fraught subject.
Elements.
Yeah.
Which is great. And it, like I just find it very fun to play a character who has a lot of eccentricities about them, but somehow still manages to play the straight guy because all the other characters around him are like the spell casting types for the most part. Like I think one of our other characters is like a gunslinger brawler type, but then the three other characters in our group are all I can't remember what they're called. The spellcasting type in that game that uses playing cards to cast spells and things. And my character has always kind of been the straight character amongst all this kind of chaos, because they're very much one of the few characters who hasn't like been involved in supernatural stuff up until this campaign. Like they didn't even know any of it existed. So now they're completely new to it all, and then all the other characters are familiar and used to this sort of stuff. So I always enjoy that kind of experience of this character is very eccentric, but somehow they're also like, what the hell is going on? You know. So that was great. And then other than that, I've been watching a lot of Queer Eye, which has been putting me in an emotional state of like almost constant either, oh, this is lovely, or oh my god, I'm gonna cry.
Yep. Yeah.
It's been squeezing
The
me
episode
like
with the teachers in the latest season.
I've not
was-
watched the latest season
Okay,
yet.
that was like,
I'm working
whoa,
up to it
I'm feeling it.
because I realized I only watched season 1 and then I just didn't watch any of it for ages. And then I was like, oh, there's a new season out. I might as well sort of make my way through this. And I realized I've watched season 4, the one before the latest one, and I didn't realize it. But like, so many of those episodes have reduced me to tears. Like, it is the most cliche thing to say, but like, Kurai just absolutely ruins me.
And that's the formula, right? Like it is designed to like basically like pull the heartstrings as hard as possible.
It is, yeah. It's one of those reality shows, but at the same time, it's hard not to just kind of be won over by just how pleasant it is through and through.
Yeah. Like, I just want them to come over and sort my life out, please.
I'll never forgive what's his name for putting sour cream in guacamole in season 1, though. That's just
Anthony.
Yeah, Anthony, you're on my you're on my shit list.
No, but he only did that because that woman, the grandmother, was like, put sour cream in guacamole.
Wait, no, this is for the guy. This is for like the guy in season 1. I watched this years ago.
I think this was a moment of internet outrage at the time.
Yeah.
As all things are.
But seriously, don't listeners, watchers, don't put sour cream in your guacamole, please. I'm begging you.
I would like to finally add that I feel like I am the Jonathan of any group. Like, I feel like I channel such strong Jonathan energy of like, pay attention to me. I need attention. I'm also such a goof, like a goofball.
They are hard not to. Yes, kind of just.
I love all of them, but
yeah.
Jonathan is like my channels that energy where I feel like this person is how I would be in this group.
Speaking of Netflix shows, because I've played nothing this week because I've just been horrifically busy. So I've only played Root, which we played last Friday. But last night we started watching Singles Inferno, which is I think it came out a couple of months ago. It's another Netflix. It's another,
Too Hot to Handle, right?
Yeah, like Too Hot to Handle, but it's a Korean dating show where they're all deserted on an island, just like incredibly attractive singles. Like,
yeah.
Like basically
these
they're
aren't
all
normal
models
people.
of some kind.
Yeah.
But you don't know their actual occupations or ages, and then they have to like get along and survive, and then they're on Inferno, but if they couple up, they get to go to Paradise, which is like a hotel, so they escape having to walk around and like fetch water.
Wait, hold on. So is this like based off of Dante's Inferno? Is there some
kind of very loosely. I'm not going to call it an adaptation.
Sure. I will say, I'm not sure this is what Dante had envisioned for his.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of
which
Dante's
part of the Catholic
Infernos,
diocese do these hot Koreans get to hang out with?
I was going to say, like a lot of Dante's Inferno is either talking crap about like his neighbors or like just like fawning over Greek philosophers.
Yeah.
So in a similar way, they're either talking crap about each other or like trying to fall in love with each other. Mostly the latter. Like, I've only watched one episode so far, but they're all just very pleasant to each other. It's like compared to something like Too Hot to Handle, where everyone's at each other's throats immediately because they're all competing. Here it's like, oh, you made a great dinner, and they're all just like, oh, you did really well with the rice. Like, thank you for getting the water. Like, oh, you're really good at this. It's all just really nice. So yes,
it sounds wholesome because I don't watch programs like Too Hot to Handle because one, I find cringe really difficult to deal with. Like when it's why I find shows like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or like The Office or something so difficult to live through because I just cannot deal with cringe when it's meant to like make you feel like you're crawling out of your skin. And this is why I can't watch programs like Too Hot to Handle, because I cannot get on board with the premise. I can't remove that part of myself that hurts so much when someone is doing something so embarrassing. Like the secondhand cringe it's too much. It's crippling. So I can't deal with it.
Well, here it's so there are definitely people that fit into that. You can imagine them turning up to the audition for a dating show, because the first person there is like this incredibly ripped guy, and he's just like, yeah, I think my charms are I've got an incredible body, I'm really popular, and there's a lot of that. Like a lot of them are just like, yeah, I know I look, like a Grecian model, like a Grecian statue, and so there is that element of them, but then they start to show the side where actually they're also quite nice. They're not just these kind of horrendous, like narcissistic, like voids of personality. And they have commentators who are on a sofa who they cut to, who are reacting to the show.
And they Terrace House.
Yeah. And they will just kind of be like, oh, they're showing a different side. And then often be like, yeah, like they look incredible. Just be like, yeah, no, they're right to be that confident about themselves.
I feel like if I was put on the sofa with these people, I probably would just either be like, I've got to take at least a break every minute, so then I can deal with it. Well, yeah, I can deal with the cringe, but also I would just be incredibly thirsty the whole time. But I like hearing about these shows from other people. Like, I like people telling me about, so when Too Hot to Handle was happening, I like other people telling me what's going on in the show more than I would enjoy watching it. So I have friends who watched the Rock of Love with Bret Michaels, which is an old reality television show starring Bret Michaels, who's a rock star. Yeah, Chase knows. And he was trying to find his Rock of Love.
That's not a phrase that makes sense though.
It doesn't.
That doesn't make sense. It's not a phrase. People aren't like, you're my Rock of Love.
Yeah, it's these bachelorettes, and they all want to marry Bret Michaels for some reason.
For obvious reasons.
Yes,
for television reasons.
And I'm pretty sure he did this show twice, because I don't think it worked out the first time.
They really spun it into the second season as as sort of redemption, he's the spurned lover. I can't remember exactly the reason why it didn't work out the first. Well, you can guess at the reasons why a relationship on a dating show didn't work out, but he's he's back again. They spun it into a whole narrative. Yeah,
of course, yeah. Such as television. I'll add quickly while we're in the reality TV corner, because to be honest, it's the only thing I've done other than be busy with other stuff. We also started watching, on the recommendation of my sister, Below Deck, which is a crew of people working on cruise ships or like cruise yachts. So they have these mega rich people come in and they rent the yacht for a weekend, and these people, the crew, are basically there to just serve them whatever they need. And the first episode of the season we watched is excruciating. If you don't like cringe, never watch that episode. I can
feel myself,
because there is an excruciatingly let's say stereotypical kind of very rich person, very oblivious to what's actually going on in the world, who immediately gets very drunk, to the point where their own companions are saying, don't give him any more vodka, just give him water, and then is demanding a bubble party that none of the other people attend at first, so the crew of the yacht have to kind of join him, and then is constantly saying oh, I hear Aerosmith's in town, can you get Aerosmith to come and join us? And the poor crew of this yacht have to at least show that they've made some effort in trying to reach out to Aerosmith. It's excruciating to watch.
Yeah,
it sounds like Real Housewives but on a boat.
It's and the crew are largely just at each other's throats because they're stuck on a boat together, but also
sure.
I don't think it's the first season of it, because there's a setup of two people come on and they're like, oh, we were on a previous season, and one of them is just straight up, yeah, I didn't like her at all, and then she walks through the door in a very reality TV way that is obviously fantastic.
Yeah, and you're like, oh,
yeah. So there you go. That's been the reality trash TV section of this podcast because I haven't played anything. I wish. Tell you what, that's an RPG I'd like to see. I know there was a telenovela one that actually Magpie Games put out, but I can't think of a full tabletop RPG that lets you just be like on a dating show, on a reality TV show, something like that gives the framework of one of those shows and lets you kind of portray the kind of typical stereotypical folks that you see on those shows where they're out for themselves, they're in it to win it, whether that's love or money or what have you. I think it would make an interesting framework for an RPG. I'll bring it back. I'll steer it somehow back on course.
Yeah. Well, Charlie Everidge Nunn says Black Armada released a Below Decks RPG on their Patreon called Free Sheets to the Wind.
Oh my god. Okay. Thank you,
need
Charlie.
to find this, Matt Jarvis.
3 Sheets to the Wind.
Sounds incredible.
Which is
Sarah's
incredible.
in the chat again.
I can immediately see how that would work. Yes, shout out to Sarah also. Okay,
What's
let's move
FMAB?
on. It's Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Okay.
We've had enough anime talk. Let's get somewhat into 2022 before we go there. I will say, if you're in the chat, hi, thanks for joining us. If you'd like to drop us a question, we'll pull some towards the end of the show. So just drop them in chat. And if you're listening to this on catch up, you can email us at podcast@dicebreaker.com. Or you can find us on Twitter @joindicebreaker. But hey, drop us your questions. Just let us know what you've been playing, or just ask us anything you want. It can be about tabletop games, or it can be about the latest season of Queer Eye or Singles Inferno. All is appreciated. Okay, let's move over to news and attempt an impossible tangent out of the things we were just talking about. Because it's not been a wholly positive week for the tabletop industry, let's put it that way. So Chase, do you want to start us off with a relatively non-easy subject and tell us what's been going on with Tabletop Simulator the last week or so?
Yeah, so you might have seen this. So the crux of it is that Tabletop Simulator has been facing a lot of backlash from the community for the way that its moderation team has handled stuff in its global chat, and that ultimately led to them just removing global chat from their game. And now there's a lot of like review manipulation going on Steam, and it's sort of bringing a lot of the sort of like a lot of issues that they haven't addressed are sort of festering and are now becoming this issue that needs to be addressed, or a lot of people are saying they're not going to use the program anymore. So this started out with a user, Zoe Allred, who put out a tweet thread which went pretty viral, talking about her experience with like talking in global chat and keep getting like kicked from the chat or banned temporarily for the use of certain words like gay, words like trans, like sort of like certain terms that are relating to someone's sexual or gender identity, sexual orientation, gender identity, those sort of things. And it seemed very weird that this kept happening, even though there was other stuff like political talk about US presidents and elections, ideological things like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. And so she created this thread sort of like just talking about like how fed up she was with all of this. Even like reached out to support, and it sort of seemed like the issue was that Tabletop Simulator, which is a very large program, and I don't know what their moderation team looks like, but there were some claims from the moderation team that they used sort of like automated keywords that whenever folks use them would automatically like sort of like catch and filter and throw them out of the global chat, because per their like rules, which if you go to the story that's on the site, there is a link to Tabletop Simulator's rules, and up at the top in bold, it's like, we want to keep this on topic and family friendly, quote from their rules. Unfortunately, it seems that words like gay and trans and other things like that are included in these filters, which kind of creates an issue whenever the reason for those filters is keeping it family friendly. It's leading a lot of people to claim like, why is gender identity not seen as family friendly? So this all happened, I believe, on January 7th. On January 8th, Tabletop Simulator put out a statement saying that they were reviewing this issue, and we're pretty sure that this happened because one of the users, Zoe Allred, was like intentionally trying to hit the filter by using words like cis, straight, heterosexual, all these other things to just sort of like see what was catching the filter. The next day, they came out and said, oh, we were misinformed about what was actually going on. We have decided to remove the global chat for the time being, and we are reviewing our sort of like moderation rules and how we do moderation, and we'll get back to you. It has been radio silent since then. Unfortunately, in the interim, as this has become a sort of like issue that's come to the head, there has been a lot of transphobic reviews on Steam, a bunch of people saying like, we're really glad that Tabletop Simulator isn't giving into SJWs and other such language like that. I won't quote directly from these reviews, but there is a lot of reviews from folks who are taking the obvious message from the way that Berserk Games, which develops Tabletop Simulator, is handling this. There hasn't been much that's happened since then. Tabletop Simulator did not get back to my email trying to get a comment. They haven't done anything else but remove the global chat. I believe the global chat is still disabled as of today, as of the recording of this podcast. And a lot of users are saying, if this is the way this is going to happen, we're just not going to use your program anymore. We're going otherwise. Tabletopia, which does not seem to have the same filters. Screenshot.gg or screencap.gg is another one that I've seen some people use. Alternatives are being offered up as people seem to like object to the way this was handled and move on to different programs.
Board Game Arena is another one, or you know, specific apps for board games. Like there are other options out there.
Yeah, and understandably so, really, because you say like how they handled it, but like handled would be maybe too strong a word for just them like closing the door on this festering, just like of like hate and just vileness. So yeah, like it's just like frankly, it's just shocking to see. Like it's just a kind of a grim state of affairs all over the place from the initial handling of it through to obviously the review bombing, I guess, on Steam.
I mean, the fact that they haven't come out with any statement like supporting LGBTQ, you know, members of the community and sort of standing against these people who are putting up all these horrible, you know, transphobic, homophobic reviews. To me, that's a sign of them. That's as bad as them. That's essentially them saying, we don't care about our LGBTQ plus members. Like that is as much, that is the same thing as like supporting these horrible people. Like by them not speaking out, they might as well be saying, we agree with these horrible people. Like that's my opinion, by the way, not Dicebreakers. But like that to me is like just as bad. Because...
and I mean, the irony is this all stems from moderation, and moderation is there to filter out weeds like this in the first place. And this is what happens if you don't filter out those weeds. And for them to just be like, well, we're just going to turn off global chat. And it's like, that doesn't solve the problem at all. Like, what are you doing?
Burying your head not only doesn't solve the problem, but it also just makes it worse because... you might as well be supporting these horrible people by doing nothing.
I mean, historically, like bigotry moves into a place where there is inaction and just sort of festers there, which is exactly what's happened here. The bigots online have seen them removing global chat as Tabletop Simulator taking away LGBTQ plus people's ability to talk online, and therefore win in their eyes, right? And if you'll recall, last year, this is not the first time that automated tools have ostensibly caused problems for Tabletop Simulator. There was the whole language issue from last year where they used automated technology to translate Tabletop Simulator into like 29 other languages with ludicrously bad results that everyone was just like, why did you just not pay people to do this? Like you were one of the largest like virtual tabletop programs in the space. And it seems like this is, again, I don't know for sure because they didn't get back to me, but it certainly seems like this is Tabletop Simulator not investing the resources in moderating their community and it biting them in the back end.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, sorry, Meehan, you go.
I was just going to say, the thing is, in some ways, the way that Berserk has not moderated their community is positive because all these mods exist, like, caveat, please support publishers and developers, but the fact that they've not gone through and like copyright,
Right.
done copyright attacks or allowed companies to do copyright attacks on all the various mods, and I think that's meant that publishers have also been willing to support mods and put their own mods up for free. Like, the workshop side of things, really positive. Like, that's fantastic. But you can't apply that kind of approach to the entire community situation. Like, allowing players to create their own mods and things, thumbs up. That's great, because the only people not benefiting from that are, arguably publishers. But if publishers have got any sense, they'll just say, you know what, we're fine with it anyway, because board games are a different ballpark from video games anyway. Like, people who really people who really like the board games will buy the board games, like, regardless if the mod exists. The mod just makes it easier for them to play with people who maybe aren't around so often, etc. But like, that kind of sort of vague approach to moderation and community cannot be applied across the board. It's not the same. It shouldn't be applied to, for example, censoring or filtering certain offensive words, or like translating languages, or managing what people are saying on your chat. Like, that cannot be treated in the same way. That needs more care and more consideration, and that's just not what they think. By just letting it be and not doing anything is a neutral approach, and it's really not.
And I think in some ways, obviously, we don't know, because they haven't made a statement, but and they've closed up everything, they've brought the shutters down. But the idea of assigning this to some sort of automated tool seems like a very easy get out. And actually, if that was the case, then it would be, that's a mistake. Why, like, words such as gay and trans would be on a family-friendly list? To be honest, that's just a load of bullshit anyway. But the fact that is a very easy thing to solve. You take those off the filter, you apologize, you say, we didn't know those were on there. Like, you've pulled a filter list from somewhere else.
I mean,
those things
should
happen,
not.
but
those terms should not be on, like, the filter list to begin with, because this argument has been made so many times by so many cowardly companies who don't want to offend, people who are transphobic or homophobic, by saying, oh, it's our family friendly filter. I'm sorry, but if you allow someone to say straight or heterosexual on your forums, you should allow people to say gay or trans. That's not, like, that is discriminatory. Like, I'm sorry, but it is.
There's a document that Zoe Allred compiled of a bunch of screenshots of conversations, both within, like, the Discord as well as emails with the support team. And in one of them, one of the mods says that they filtered those words because in their experience, this is quoting from the mod, paraphrasing from the mod, the use of terms like gay and trans were overwhelmingly used derogatorily by the chat. So adding to the filters is protecting the LGBT community from, and it's like, I'm sorry, this personally, you should be very skeptical of any sort of defense like that. That is just, it's one, it's just not true, and probably there's no data to back it up, and two, it is not a helpful solution in that case.
No, like, erasure is not the same as protection. If you were, like, protecting people, you would put more effort into moderating your chat and actually moderate, like, language and actual phrases that are very clearly transphobic or homophobic. Like, that is just because they cannot be bothered to like, fully, invest in moderating properly. So all in all, what a show.
And again, like, go read Chase's full story over on the website if you want the full context. And reminder that Board Game Arena exists, Tabletopia exists. There are dedicated apps on various storefronts. So there are many avenues to not use Tabletop Simulator.
Until they sort this out, we're just not going to be using Tabletop Simulator. Like, we don't support that kind of approach, that behavior. Like, most of Dicebreaker are queer, and, like, this is not okay. So Screw that.
Again, we'll pivot out of the very not easy to pivot out of subject. Let's talk about briefly the new game from the creator of Kemet. Meehan, you wrote the story about Yucatan.
Yeah, I'm in the chopper in ancient.
Oh yeah, the news chopper's back, maybe.
In ancient Colombia.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So.
Oh boy is right.
Oh boy is right. Talking about one blunder to another potential blunder. So Kemet, which is a game that we've played on the channel before, I thought it was pretty cool. And I believe our friend Wheels is a fan, particularly of Kemet Blood and Sand, which was the re-release last year, which added some really cool bits. But the creator of Kemet, please, I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. Guillaume Montier. I tried my best. I think it's a French name. I'm not 100% sure. Their next game will be called Yucatan. It was announced a while ago, but it's coming on Kickstarter. In fact, it's on Kickstarter now. Apologies. And it kind of takes place in ancient Mayan civilization, which in the game, players basically become rulers of their own cities, and they have to sort of gain points by establishing control over other cities. And they can acquire kind of new powers by making human sacrifices to their gods. Now, I am not an expert of ancient Mayan culture by any means, so take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But I did reach out to Matago, which is the publisher of Yucatan. And I basically said, hey, there's some potentially dodgy stuff going on with the premise of this game, particularly with its huge emphasis on human sacrifice, etc. Have you got a cultural consultant about this stuff? And their response was, apparently they have an expert, a historical expert of the time period, and they kind of talked to them about making things, and they said accurate. Now, accurate could be a very subjective term as to what we're meaning here. They did not confirm if they'd had a cultural consultant, which I consider to be a very different thing from a historical
they seem
expert.
to dance around it a bit.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, that's on this person being an Anglo historian and not anything else, right?
They did not confirm, like, if this person was Colombian.
Sure.
I mean, they're also not a cultural consultant, as far as I know. They did not use that term.
That work is very different.
That is a very different work from being historically accurate to how is this going to reflect on our perception of, like, a different culture from ours, particularly when there's like a reference. Particularly when there's a heavy emphasis on making human sacrifices. Also, the cover for this game is very...
It doesn't lend any kind of reassurance to, like, it'll be treated in like a sensitive way.
Yeah, I mean, like, the front cover, if you've not seen it, is essentially a person looking like they're about to make a human sacrifice. I think that they're holding a human head there.
Yeah, they are.
And then there's armies of, like, there's a very strong kind of barbaric vibe to it.
Yeah, it's like red and black color palette as well. It's not just like, that's the thing, is like accurate portrayal of human sacrifice. Like that's possible, but that's not daubing things in like reds and blacks and having this kind of like moody, like that's just presenting it as it would have happened.
We're not saying that human sacrifices didn't happen during the ancient Mayan civilization. In fact, human sacrifices, I think, has been a thing throughout various
many
across the world.
histories across the world. Like, it's just the fact that there is like so much of an emphasis on this. Like, this is a gameplay mechanic. Like, I mean, in Kemet, and again, I doubt there was a cultural consultant involved in that. If I'm wrong, please let me know, Matago. That obviously was based on ancient Egyptian history. And there were like bits in that where you could like have people be sent to be sacrificed to a god or whatever. And again, I don't know, that probably happened in ancient Egypt. But one, ancient Egypt is a culture that's been heavily covered already. So it kind of feels less gross when you think about, like, it's not like...
And it's not the thing on the cover, right?
It's not like the main emphasis of Kemet either.
Making this
like,
culture just human sacrifices is very different to it being
Whereas,
a part
like,
of a wider depiction.
I know little to nothing about ancient Mayan culture. And like if this is being marketed to me as, hey, human sacrifice is the big part of this, like, that to me is significantly a different situation from human sacrifices being included in a game about ancient Egypt. Because ancient Egypt, like, that's a fairly, like, there's loads of media about ancient Egypt out there. Like, we've consumed a lot of it, whereas ancient Mayan cultures, not so much of it out there. So the fact that you're also doing this makes it more like, so yeah, it's a shame. Not a huge fan.
Yeah. Hey,
they've got a
hire
corn
cultural
tray.
consultants.
Yeah, please hire cultural consultants, because they might look at this thing and say, hey,
maybe don't do that.
Maybe don't do that. Definitely have games about ancient Mayan cultures being made. Like, have more games about different cultures be made. Maybe have a designer from that culture make it, or at least hire cultural consultants to do it.
I just think it's super funny that there's a Euro game about the heavily European colonized region of South America and Central America. Like, that's just on its face grimly hilarious.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's like far from the first one of those. And I'm sure it will be far from the last one of those. But all right, let's move on to the last news story I've got here, which is just a quick one. Chase, you wrote up this. Great news, pandemic's vanished.
Yeah, the pandemic's gone, y'all. Well, a pandemic is gone.
Yeah.
Oh, what you gotta do me like that?
Sorry, everybody. Yeah, real bait and switch. So this comes from a post on the board game subreddit. Someone was just like, "Hey, I went to go update Pandemic on my new phone, the like digital app, and it's just not there." And we promised we would talk about Asmodee Digital again, and here it is. Customer support got back to this person and confirmed that all versions of the digital app for Pandemic would just be pulled from stores eventually. They said that by the 31st, it would be gone from the Microsoft Store. It is already gone from Google Play, from iOS, from Steam, and then it will stay on the Nintendo Switch until June of this year, which is probably for contractual reasons based on whenever they put it up there. I can't confirm that, but just on my prior knowledge of how that works, how that store works, that's probably why it's staying up until June. The reasons? They said this decision was made with a heavy heart for a multitude of reasons that we cannot disclose.
Which what an incredible response! Just to be like, yeah, it's happened. We can't tell you why.
Oh, Brooke Boyd says it's been removed from Xbox Game Pass as well.
Yeah, I forgot it's on Game Pass as well. Yeah, so just up top, if you have purchased the game, you can still download it. Like, there are settings that you can go through and like find your past purchases and re-download that. Ostensibly, that means that it will no longer be supported. So if for whatever reason it doesn't work, like it's a buggy mess, it's probably going to stay a buggy mess on your device because it's just gone, and we don't know why. We can speculate that they're going to put out.
We'll speculate.
Oh yeah, they might be putting out a new version. They might be doing an app a la Catan Universe where...
That's my bet. My bet is Pandemic Universe.
Yeah, I mean, so that would make a lot of sense because Catan Universe is a way to just sort of like throw all of the different versions of that game into one sort of singular app thing. It also means that they can sell you all of those versions, all those digital versions in a single place. Yeah, that seems like the most likely one to me.
And I think this app, I think it originally launched in something like 2012, so it's probably due just a refresh. Like for the size of the kind of like Pandemic the board game, you would think that pulling it entirely would be a very strange decision, because it's probably not far off something like Catan in terms of the number of people wanting to play it. I can't remember if this is the app that I've played. I think I have played this app version, and it's not got local multiplayer. I might be wrong about that, but I seem to remember a Pandemic app not having local multiplayer, which, given it's a card game, is a very strange choice.
Yep.
So yeah, hopefully it'll be the case that it resurfaces again and it's better, and it's not just we found a way of squeezing more money from you. Hey, buy this DLC.
Yeah, that's what we not want.
I just don't know why. Sorry, go ahead, Meehan.
Also, don't release it in a state like Terraforming Mars is in, please.
Which one?
Glitchy mess.
I just don't understand why, if they were doing that, even if they were just like upgrading it, fixing a lot of stuff, why wouldn't they keep it on the store? Why pull it unceremoniously like this?
It is odd to not have an immediate announcement, right? And be like, okay, we've pulled it, but don't worry, we've got a better version coming, and this is why. Just be like, we can't disclose anything. Makes it sound so nefarious in weird ways.
Yeah.
I have an exact answer for you. It's because the new version they're going to put out, which is going to be like Catan Universe, they want you to buy. They don't want you to buy the old version of Pandemic.
Okay.
For example, if you just want to play Pandemic, they want you to buy the new snazzy version they're going to put out with all the extra add-ons you can buy and all the various transactions that you can make on it. They want you to buy that one. They don't want to give you the option to buy the old one. Like, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, why would they leave a gap? But I suppose the reason is for PR reasons. Because if you immediately swapped them out and said, okay, now we're charging you double or something like that, that would just annoy a load of people. Whereas if you give it a few weeks to cool down and you just take it off and you don't really tell anyone
subtly,
it makes it a lot easier to then be like, hey, look at this new Pandemic app. Oh, the old one. Oh no, we don't know anything about that. But look at this new shiny one.
Oh, her. We don't know her.
I don't know her. It's just like, it just seems like they're creating an issue where there shouldn't have been one. There's got to be a better way to have handled this, if that's their plan, which it probably is, and people were going to be upset. But like, there has to have been a better way to handle this rollout. This seems so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, Chase, of course, there's a better way. It doesn't mean that's the way they want to do it. Like, the way they want to do it is that they don't care about, or they don't care enough about perception, about public perception. They care more about having people buy their new product. And this is the sure way to do it.
I have seen some people say that like this is due to them being Asmodee being purchased by the Embracer Group, which is largely a video game license holder, and that deal is not final yet. That is still going through. So I don't think that has affected this in any way.
And again, you think it would then be everything would switch over at once, and it would be a very smooth, obvious, rather than just we're not going to say anything, we're not going to communicate anything.
Yeah,
we're not going to reassure people why this is happening.
Now, will them being purchased by the Embracer Group give them better development resources to make these digital apps?
Possibly.
I hope so.
We all hope so. Yeah, for sure.
I played that Arkham Horror game. I don't actually think that was developed by Asmodee Digital, but either way, it wasn't great. All right. Chase, you've written here, you'd like to quickly mention Xenomonth.
Oh yeah, so I won't belabor this at all, but if you are someone who likes Zinequest, it's happened 3 years in a row now. It's not happening in February anymore. They moved it to August. That is a whole other issue. But in its place, a lot of indie designers have created this new thing called Xenomonth that they're going to do. It's sort of handled on their own. You can just search for Xenomonth, just Google it, or if hashtag Xenomonth, one word. Xenomonth 2022, I think, is what it's under. There are a lot of indie RPG designers that are taking February to create their own games because they've already planned for this. There is a website where all the games are being hosted. They're funding in various places that aren't Kickstarter for,
I was going to say,
blockchain reasons. So if you really enjoyed Xenomonth because it gave you a bunch of like really neat, like smaller zine-sized games, which are really cool for like designing in time constraint spaces, check out Zinemonth. It's going to be going on throughout January. There's already some projects. It'll go on throughout February, so keep an eye on that.
Awesome.
Do it. Support indie creators.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and maybe find other ways to support them other than Kickstarter. Before we move on to this week's segment, we've had a super chat from JT Gerdes, who's been a member of Dicebreaker Plus for 7 months. Thank you very much for your support. He says, "Hey DB team, thank you for all you do. Keep being your awesome selves." Thanks very much.
Aw,
You too.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Yeah,
Matt
thanks very
Jarvis,
much. Happy New Year.
If we get enough money, can I get a soundboard? Where every time
Just a
someone says
soundboard?
every time someone says Kickstarter, I can press a button that just goes bleh, like that, like a sick noise.
Every time someone says the word NFT.
Yeah.
Look, you
No, I'll
hate
do
or
a
you
fart noise
create.
for that one.
Oh god, okay.
Oh, Matt Jarvis, if you gave me access to a soundboard, you would rule the day.
And we can make it Troy Baker's voice if we pay Troy Baker a lot of money for an NFT. That's a different story for a different time.
I'll get him to do a fart and record it and send it to me. So
I mean, he basically is by doing an NFT. All right, let's move on to this week's segment. Well, hey, if you're actually, Meehan, why don't you introduce this as the Critical Role fan of the team? You've taken on this burden.
Jarvis, this is like recompense for all the sort of teasing I've been doing this episode. Having watched Critical Role Campaign 1 and Critical Role Campaign 2, I've not started Campaign 3 for various reasons, which you can read about on the website on a very special little article, which made some people upset. There is...
Doesn't it always?
There is an animated series coming out on January 28th, I believe, called The Legends of Vox Machina, which is based essentially on the first campaign of Critical Role. Having watched it, it starts off and it gets better, and then campaign 2 is just better, so I'd rather they just adapt that. But the series is being shown on Amazon Prime Video, and it was kickstarted by various fans. I did not contribute to it myself because I personally don't think it needs to exist, because you can just watch the show.
And you believe in journalistic objectivity.
Yeah, this is my opinion. But anyway, the trailer has come out for it this week, which I watched and wrote a little news story about, which you can read on the site. My thoughts on it are not positive, not because it's Critical Role, but because I don't believe that it presents the story, the characters, or the general sort of tone in the best light. It's just, I think we best described it as like Rick and Morty mixed with Critical Role. Like,
it
is it's just a lot of swearing, which I don't have complete disapproval of, and just a lot of that kind of weird, this is adult zany humor, woo, mixed with some weird, like, quite serious, clearly serious plot moments. It's just very odd. And the thing is, trailers can be very deceiving, and they don't always present things in the best light. So I'm not going to just judge it completely on that. I will probably watch it, and then we'll see what happens then.
And then I'll judge it.
But leading from that, we were wondering what tabletop stuff would we like to see in an animated series, or if we were forced to pick one. There you go. So this is our segment.
That's it. That's the segment. Surprise.
So, listeners, let us know what tabletop, let's call it properties, brands you would like to see turned into it.
I love
IPs.
IPs.
I love IPs.
Content.
Both the I and the P.
Matt Jarvis, I'm going to get you a t-shirt that says I love IPs, but it will be in that kind of I love New York style.
Oh, yeah. I heart IP.
Yeah, I heart
I can
IP.
see it, yeah. And then I'll just draw a little C in between the I and the P. I'm going to dive straight in here, and I'm going to immediately suggest the obvious one, which I think Root would make an easy animated series. It's got great art.
Adorable.
It's got a great world. I'm pretty sure that Redwall got turned into an animated series, and that I think I watched as a kid. So I imagine it's something along those lines. So I think Root makes sense. Going to get that away because there's been a lot of Root chat before we move into like
No,
actual RPG stuff as well.
Just use Kyle Farron's art, please.
Yeah, just make Kyle Farron a millionaire with
Yeah.
this animated show.
And as Umbra points out in the chat, there is already a Blades in the Dark show coming, which
that was going to be my thing.
Is another really good. I think that's a really good.
I super think that they're going to do whatever they think, but I truly believe that would be most successful if they do Blades in the Dark. Is it like an animated show?
Yeah, I think animation would lend itself really nicely. No, it's live action. I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember if they've confirmed that, but I do think animation would work really well for Blades in the Dark.
Because there's been a recent spat of really, really good adult animated shows coming out over the last few years, such as Castlevania, Arcane, really good. What's that other one I also watched? I can't remember. Anyway, if they did like an adult animated series based on Blades in the Dark, it would slap. It would be so good.
I'm afraid like live action is going to end up looking a lot like what that show Shadow and Bone, whatever that weird.
It runs the risk of the cosplay problem, right? Where it just looks like everyone's in some kind of cosplay, and it all feels very stagey and like fake. And
also, Blades in the Dark is like at least one part of it is very action oriented. Again, this is sort of like the Avatar thing as well. It's like if you like animation works well for like action scenes and stuff like that, having to do that in live action, one, takes someone who knows their stuff, and two, a lot of time and money that I don't know if these shows are going to get.
And then Blades in the Dark has flashbacks built into it as well. So like just in general, it's a very cinematic format for a role-playing game.
It has potential to be a very stylized series, and live action stylized series, they can go the good way, which is, for example, Series of Unfortunate Events, which is an incredibly stylized live action series that I think pulls that off incredibly well. Or it can go so badly, and you're like, these people are so smug because they're like, we're doing something so cool and amazing, and then you're sat there just going, this is so embarrassing to watch that I feel like my skeleton is crawling out of my body right now.
As I assume Wheels says in the chat, you want Cowboy Bebop original, you're going to get Cowboy Bebop remake.
Oh my God,
which is
Wheels,
the worst, most accurate thing that Wheels has ever said. And these got a long list. I'm trying to think of other. I mean, Monster of the Week is again like the format lends itself to like, but that just means that it's basically going to be Buffy, although thankfully without Joss Whedon. Like, okay, you know what? I'll take that. Or Doctor Who or something like that. I would love a good like without Lovecraft himself. So detach from that. Like Arkham Horror or Call of Cthulhu as an RPG or Trail of Cthulhu. Like focus on the mystery. So X-Files, but distinctly cosmic horror.
Yep.
Like that would be great. And I think actually that could work in animation, because the problem with monster stuff is that as soon as you see the monster, it looks naff.
Yeah.
CGI looks.
Yeah, it looks like a Buffy thing where like out of every 10 monsters, one of them might look okay.
Yeah.
And the rest of them just like absolutely.
It's the gentleman from the Silence episode where it's like, okay, they're very clearly just humans with masks on.
Yeah.
But it works because you're not trying to go to like out of the.
I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but like horror.
Sorry, we used to it.
I can't believe you.
Sorry. Two
you
games
have
of Root have decimated me, turned me into this.
Mr. Jarvis has been like this all week. I've just been getting clapbacks from him. Like,
you see the environment I have to work in, folks. This is.
I know. Like horror can be such a good theme like genre for like animated shows, and I think a lot of creators like shy away from it because you're gonna have to make it like an R rating or something for it to be like effective. But Castlevania is so good. Maybe not the last season or the third season.
Maybe not
but
Warren
the first
Ellis.
season of the second season of Castlevania. I love how violent that series is. Oh my god, it's so violent, and like I'm so happy about that. Arkham
That
Horror
would
Files.
be incredible. Yeah.
Like fully lean into the gross, like terrifying aspect of, and also they have so much to choose from. You've got
they have the
Elvis
characters.
Horror.
That's the
Arkham Horror, the card game, and they've already like wrestled that franchise, all those themes and things away from Lovecraft and made it their own thing. That like they've got enough there. It's not like they've not got enough to kind of work with. But Arkham Horror Files was what I was going to pick. Like that.
I think that's
a
Castlevania
so
Arkham Horror would be.
It'd be so good.
Alex,
that means they've got to include enough characters for me to be obsessed with.
I mean, they got a lot to pick from in that universe. There's a lot.
The sea captain. With the hairy chest that everyone likes, or the
William Yorick, who's the gravedigger.
I think that's William Yorick. Yeah. There's the musician. I can't remember the jazz musician.
Yeah,
he's really cute.
Diana, the reformed cultist, who I really like as well. That's like a good into the cult side of it.
What's the actor called? What's she called? I can't remember, but she's really
Eva Green.
She looks like Eva Green. What are you gonna say?
Look, I just took a stab in the dark and assumed it would be Eva Green.
I was going to say, so you also put not just like an RPG, but maybe actual plays as well. And I've got two answers for this, just personal favorites. The Dimension 20 series Fantasy High, like their sort of long running recurring setting. I think that'd be perfect for an animated show. Like it's based in like a high school that takes all the D&D sort of like monsters and stuff and throws them into like a high school setting. And they do a really good job of like, whereas I feel like the trailer for Vox Machina cannot find a good tone. Fantasy High, just from the get, like has a perfect sort of balance of like the irreverent tone of like, obviously this is silly. We are a bunch of like fantasy tropes in a high school setting. This is going to be tropey as hell, but they use it to tell like character focused, really serious and like emotional stories. And I think that would be a great fodder for an animated show. Two, a personal favorite actual play of mine is Friends at the Table, which is co-hosted by Austin Walker and a bunch of other wonderful folks. They play a lot of like really awesome games. They are currently using Heart by Rowan Rickett-Deckard for their Songfiel season. That would be perfect for like a more esoteric sort of like really weird and wild animated show that can bring in just a bunch of different like art styles from season to season to fit the style of game that they're playing. I think that'd be a wonderful and a sort of anthology animated series, which I love anthology animated series. We need more of those and not just like long running seasons.
I've got 3 things to say, which will probably spin out into like entire video essay. But firstly, one of the big reasons why I'm not a huge fan of this Critical Role animated series is because, as far as I know, they are basically just following the plot of the original campaign 1. Mm-hmm. And like, this is the problem I have with like live action versions of animated series and films, is the fact that this thing already exists. In its form, like Beauty and the Beast is a great film, partly because it's animated. Making that into a live action film takes away those things that make the original good. And I feel like an animated version of Campaign 1, you're like removing the parts of what makes actual play its own enjoyable thing to watch. So if they had done like something different, or maybe with the same characters but a different story, or an original thing, then I'm like, okay, that's fine. But because they're literally doing, as far as I know, an adaptation of the first campaign, I'm like, I'm just going to compare it to that and just be like, campaign 1 is just a better experience to watch than this series. So that's why I wouldn't say an actual play, because that story already is there and it's like, I will just watch that. Whereas like a board game doesn't really have an existing story as much, or an RPG. So you're already having to pretty much create original content from that anyway. You just got a foundation to work from. The second thing I was going to say is, imagine a Baron Park animated series.
Baron Park. Yeah, I
Where
can
you
see
would-
that.
Yeah, where you would be like building a park,
Hmm.
like for all following these characters in like a bear park.
I mean, isn't it kind of just Yogi Bear then? But they're built.
No, because
You do it from the bear's perspective as it's built around them.
no, because I would do it from the perspective of the bear caretaker who's on the front of the box.
Gross.
Is lovely. Well, no, wait, yeah, she's on the front of the box with the bear, and I love her.
Hmm.
I know nothing about her, but I love her. And it would be like her and like all the different bears, and maybe she's the only one who can understand the bears.
Yeah, okay, that's the twist. I like
That's
that,
the twist.
Part
yeah.
Dr. Dolittle.
I imagine it being like We Free Bears, which is a fun show on Cartoon Network. And someone else already said my idea in the chat. Monster Hearts would be an amazing animated series.
In
that art style, in the art style of the original role-playing game, that would be so cool.
We're running a little short on time, so instead of questions this week, I'm going to just pull some from the chat, because actually there are a lot of people that had a lot of really great selections. JT gonna suggest Honey Heist, which is another bear-related RPG.
Free bears.
That's very good.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. There's the suggestion of Set a Watch.
That would be so good. Make it really violent.
Yeah,
Chris
you could do
Longer
that Castlevania style.
Yeah. Chris Longer suggests a D&D series, but the normal way people play D&D. So I guess like more of a meta, or I guess more of like a straight up fantasy kind of thing. They say kind of the TV equivalent to the Fells 5 comics, which I am not familiar with.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I will say Die, speaking of Rowan Rook and Deckard, Die would be a good, and then you could do different animation styles for the different planes. There were a few suggestions of Wingspan for board games, which is yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's got an amazing art style. Like,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
that very realistic.
How you make a narrative of that? I don't. Maybe I think maybe a short where you just have those birds animated in that style would be.
Yeah, or like Creature
nice.
Comforts. Make it Creature Comforts, and they will just complain about whatever's going on in the world at the moment.
This kookaburra is.
I can't believe the price of milk down the shops today. Oh, can't you? That kind of thing.
Chase, do you know about Creature Comfort?
Yes, I have been shown
Okay.
Creature Comforts.
Right.
Excellent, yeah.
I wasn't sure because it's a bit of a old.
It feels like a very British thing. Here's a load of animals moaning. Aaron Wilmai suggests 10 Candles as an anthology series, kind of building on what you were saying, Chase.
Oh, it's just like Are You Afraid of the Dark, but make it 10 Candles as the sort of framing device.
There were a couple of suggestions of Blood Bowl. 2003 WRX suggests Blood on the Clock Tower reality show, presumably without the actual murder. Yeah, there's a lot of like fantastic suggestions. So yeah, thank you all in the chat for your great suggestions. We also had a super chat from BP Phantom who says, "Here's a bit towards me and soundboard. Meehan, can you do your blur noise, please?" Thank you all for everything you do. Thank you for supporting us. And with that, we have come to the end of this week's Dicebreaker podcast. Thank you to everyone in the chat for your suggestions. Again, if you have any questions for next week's show, we're running a little long this week. There was a lot to talk about. Send them into podcast@dicebreaker.com or join us next week from 2 p.m. GMT, where we'll be live once again with another Dicebreaker podcast. But until then, thank you very much to Chase Carter for joining us, our Texan reporter. It's always good to have you with us.
Yeehaw.
Again,
Yeehaw.
Go and check out Chase's work.
That's what he says.
Particularly the article about Tabletop Simulator if you want to be up to speed on that. And of course, Alex Meehan, thank you for being here.
Bleh. Yeah, it's great. Now it's becoming like a Dracula thing.
Bleh.
Bleh, bleh. Yeah. I'm coming for you, Adam Sandler.
This blood was off there. I can match Jarvis. Thank you for listening. We will be back next week, but until then, enjoy your weekend. Stay safe out there, and until we meet again, have a lovely day. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.